We're going to do the first graph. It's a parabola. It moved up 2, and it should be upside down. All right, so something like that. All right, and then negative x minus 4. So we're going to start down 4. Slope is -1. So that will look like this. And so we're finding the area of this shape, which is cool. You can find areas of really weird shapes, bless you. Now, not just triangles or trapezoids or semicircles. You can find the area of anything that you could write an equation for. This one is right side up. So if you want to think of like all your rectangles going this way, like your infinite number of you don't have to draw that in. I'm just trying to illustrate it for you. And areas cannot be negative. This is not like above and below sea level. This is just, we want the area of that space. So if you want to like extra bold your intersection points, sometimes that helps. These need to be x values. Everything in here needs to be x's and then a dx at the end. It needs to all be the same. You can't mix and match. So your boundaries, I'm looking at my x-axis, it should be -2 to 3, good. And it is upper minus lower, if you want to put a U and an L, upper minus lower. So the upper one is the parabola, that's this one, minus the lower one, which is the line, and then dx at the end. So it should look like that. So I'm going to distribute that negative through here. It's going to make it a plus x plus 4. And then combining my like terms, negative x squared plus x plus 6. I kept the integral and I kept the dx because I didn't actually do the antiderivative yet. I'm just kind of like simplifying it down. So our antiderivative, -1/3 x cubed plus what? What'd you guys get? 1/2 x squared, good, plus 6x, such that -2 to 3. And you can leave it alone once you get to this next step, upper minus lower. So 3 cubed is 27. -1/3 of that would be -9. 3 squared is 9, so this is plus 9/2. And then 3 times 6 is 18. You could, of course, just plug the 3 in and give them hugs. But if you were listening to the conversation before, just be really careful with your parentheses. Because if you miss a parenthesis, then the whole thing becomes wrong. So just, be careful. -2 cubed would be -8. Negatives cancel, so 8/3. This would be plus 2. -2 squared is 4. Half of that is 2. And then minus 12. And you can just go ahead and stop there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just graph this because just glancing around, it seems like a lot of you got to the graph. So this one is going to be a parabola, except sideways. I would make a table of values. Unless you're brilliant, you can do it in your brain. That's fine. I'm not going to take off if you don't put a table of values. But I'm going to plug in for y and get x. So if I plug in 0, I get 1. Now, did anyone try plugging in 1? You got a fraction, right? So I'm going to skip that 1 and just go straight to 2. If you did 1, totally fine. I just don't feel like graphing a something and a half. So I'm going to just do even numbers. And the reason I'm doing plus and minus is because when you square 2 or you square -2, you get the same thing. So we're going to get the same result here. It's going to be symmetric. So 2 squared is 4. Half of that, 2, but it's negative. So -2 plus 1 is -1. 4 squared is 16. Half of that is 8, but it's negative. So -8 plus 1 is -7. I'm sorry, I can't draw them sideways. I have to turn the paper to do this. And then the other one starts up 3 and has a slope of 1. Now, I don't have a great explanation for this, unfortunately. You kind of just need to get used to looking at them. There's not a clear-cut winner of upper minus lower. One graph is not above the other all the time. Do you see how it would split right here? This is like where the issue happens. Or you don't have one graph above the other all the time. Instead, it's going to be right minus left. So this is your right graph and this is your left graph. You can think of it like all of your rectangles are sideways. gonna go this way. And again, the big clue is that the first equation was x equals. So as soon as you realize it's dy, as soon as you realize that it's sideways, you have to rearrange both equations. This one already is. What would this one be if you get x by itself? Like you need to make it x equal. Yeah, y minus 3. And I've found that circling those helps for some reason. And this is a simple thing that helps everybody. So I'm going to stop talking. I want you guys to try and finish it. These need to be y values. Make sure you look at your y-axis. Everything in here should have y's and then a dy at the end. So it needs to all be the same. You can't mix and match. So your boundaries need to be y values. So watch, I'll point to it. I kind of don't have a better explanation than, hey, look. So your first y value, or like the lower one, is -4, good, and then up to 2. So -4 to 2, we're going to do right minus left. So the right one is the curve, the left one is the line, but it's not always that way. It just so happened to be for both these problems, right? So it's going to be the -1/2 y squared plus 1 minus y minus 3, and then a dy at the end. So these are y numbers. Everything in here says y, and then dy at the end. So again, distributing your negative sign, that'll be minus y plus 3. And I'm not going to like do the problem yet, so I'm going to leave that there. I'm just going to kind of combine some things to make this a bit easier. It'll be -1/2 y squared minus y, and then plus what? If you put them together. Yeah, I thought I heard somebody say there, plus 1. So now I'm going to do the calculus. Now I'm going to do the antiderivative. So this would, you'd want it to be 1/3 y cubed, but there's already a -1/2 there. So you have to do 1/2 times 1/3. So 1/6. 2 times 3 is 6. Or is everybody okay there? All right, minus 1/2 y squared plus, this is a really common mistake. I wrote it incorrectly. That happens all the time though. And I totally get why that happens, because you're so used to, if there's just a number, you put whatever x, but it needs to be y. So please just be really careful about that. That is a very common mistake. All right, such that -4 to 2, we're going to again do upper minus lower, and then you can leave it alone. This would be what 2 cubed is 8. So -8/6, you don't have to reduce it, minus 2 plus 8. And then if you plug in -4, now you guys do need to know 4 cubed. In this case, negative. What is -4 cubed? 60. Well, -64. Negatives are going to cancel. So 64/6, whatever that is. Would that be -8, -16? You can just leave that alone. And you didn't even need to go that far. I just don't like fighting with the parentheses, so I always kind of simplify it a little bit.